We're back with another edition of Smart Driving Cars. We appreciate you spending time with us. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University and co-author of the new book, The Real Case for Driverless Mobility, Alan Kornhauser. Hi, Alan.
Hey, thanks for the plug, Fred.
Not a plug. And with us once again is your co-author and publisher of The Dispatcher, Michael Sena. Hi, Michael.
Great. Hi, Fred. Hi, Alan. Great to be with you again.
And another plug. And we have with us the voice of the book that will be coming out on audio sometime soon, Fred Fishkin, a third plug.
Yes.
My goodness.
We've gotten through what I suppose is at least the first draft, and hopefully not many corrections will be needed, but we're pretty much recorded now. So made progress. Michael, has spring arrived there in Sweden?
Within the last 2 days, the temperature rose above 33, where it's been stuck for the last week or so. And we're up in the 40s now. Ooh. So yeah, we feel like the buds are beginning to show up on some of the bushes and trees. And yeah, tonight we change our clocks, so we catch up with you again.
Excellent.
We're always 2 weeks behind or 2 weeks ahead.
Yeah, but you now have 12 hours of light, right?
Well, everybody has 12 hours of light when it's this time of year. Yes.
It was an easy guess for me. Thank you. We include you in the everybody's. Yeah. You aren't an outlier.
I've said this many times, but I'll say it. Everybody gets the same amount of light. They just get it in different doses.
Terrific. Well, let's turn to the April edition of The Dispatcher. On top is a feature on using low Earth orbit satellites for transport. And you're really laying out a lot of information here, Michael.
That was the point. I likened this to the article that I wrote in the February 2018 issue of The Dispatcher, no humanless drive without AGI. So that was the first time I wrote about artificial general intelligence. And then starting about, I think it was the following year or the year after that, I began moderating a panel at the ITU Future Network Car on artificial intelligence, and starting that with, where does artificial general intelligence fit into the whole picture of artificial intelligence? And what I've tried to do here is to talk about or write about something that really isn't top of mind to most people right now. There are some folks who are thinking about possibly using low Earth orbit satellite technology for automobile applications, but frankly, not that many. I mean, I mentioned Geely, but Geely's really not doing very much at this point, except for putting up a couple of satellites. Starlink with Elon Musk and SpaceX have lots of satellites up there, but they're really not using it yet for the automotive. But I think in 3, 4, 5 years, the same way with AGI, we're going to see more and more applications. And so this is really, the first bit, try to get out as much information as I can. And also I have to also say that this was part of an assignment that I did for the Japanese organization Hido. And once I finished it, it wasn't quite as extensive as this. It was part of a larger report. I wrote to them and I said, would you mind if I used some of the material in the report to inform the readers of The Dispatcher? And they said, absolutely. That's great. The more the merrier, the more who know about it. So that's really the reason for writing it. And I've gotten a few interesting comments back, and hopefully there'll be more in the future.
Tell us why it's important.
Well, the primary reason for adding low Earth orbit or any sort of satellite, low Earth orbit has some of major benefits compared to the GNSS, medium orbit, and high Earth orbit, because it's lower latency, it's closer to the Earth. The main reason, primary reason, is coverage. I mean, I can drive. Well, an example: taking a train from Stockholm to Gothenburg, if I don't use the Wi-Fi that's on the train, I lose coverage on my phone. If I were going to use the Wi-Fi on my phone or internet connection on my phone, or even with a phone call, I lose maybe 50 or more % of the time. I don't have coverage. So if you're using applications that require updating, for example, if you're downloading information about the status of roads or new information about signage, and these are being used by the onboard systems, if you're out of coverage, you miss something, and you don't have it. It's the same way with software updating. If you're stationary if you're doing software updating, but there can be places where you're on a ski vacation and a software update comes in, it's important, and you have no coverage. With low Earth orbit satellite coverage, you're going to be covered. You're going to have that application or the software download or the data download. That's the main reason for LEO.
Does Starlink have a big advantage, at least in the market here, and giving Tesla somewhat of an advantage?
We've seen what Mr. Musk can do with his, I can do it for you, but I won't do it for them, or vice versa. And at the beginning of the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia, there were areas where he turned off the coverage of Starlink and disadvantaged the Ukraine. The Ukraine complained internationally, and he turned it back on. So that there are advantages to owning the system, but at some point in time, you've got to make sure that you deal with everyone equally. They have an advantage because they put up more LEO satellites than anybody else, and they continue to put them up. I mean, they're and whether it will be only used for Tesla, I doubt it. I mean, they're not going to get a license for operating LEO satellites in communication. It doesn't work that way. You have to allow your satellites to be used by anyone who's out there. I mean, I may be speaking out of turn here, but as far as I know, you have to have a license for it, and the license doesn't say you only get to use it for yourself, I think. But we're not there yet. So anybody who's listening can certainly call in or write in and say, Mike, you're out in left field, or yeah, you're right.
Well, I know they have said when they announced the cell phone service using the satellites that it was open to any carrier at all.
Mm-hmm.
T-Mobile actually was at their press conference when they unveiled that their
Yeah, and what they've unveiled to date, I think with T-Mobile, or at least they've tried a few things, is only texting, simply because they don't have the bandwidth available to do more. But of course, they're, at least from my understanding, they're working on that, and also they're upgrading all their satellites to use laser communication, such that you get both the latency issue and the bandwidth issue is addressed, so that you can get the bandwidth that you might need for the amount of information that you might want to send for the various people that you might want to send them to and from, and so on. Because if it's going to be peer-to-peer type communications, I mean, you have to, each person gets maybe a different message. It's not a broadcast thing type of thing. I think the interest is to give it just like we have with cell coverage. It connects our cell phone.
Yeah,
we're not making a public call. We're making a private call. And when I was developing Copilot, and even Copilot today, we spent an enormous effort to basically compress everything so that we could fit certainly the map data and the processing data and all that stuff on on the device, really for two reasons. One is you didn't want to pay for the communication because, at least at that time, and it still is in some places, the communication is pretty expensive. So yes, you could go computer root and your reroute, on the cloud, but you got to pay for the communication. But even if the communication is cheap, you have to have it. You have to be connected. Otherwise, even if it costs zero, you can't get it. So, the reason we made Copilot, and Copilot still is, it runs all the routing, rerouting, and all that stuff on board. It updates every once in a while when it has coverage, and when it can, and it basically really tries to minimize the use of the cloud or use communications. Again, why burden it, because you really don't need updates. Updates of travel times ahead. I mean, you really don't need them updated every nanosecond, every 3 minutes or so. One is more than sufficient. And in places where you're not connected, at least you're not left with, with nothing. So, yes, it's really important, and the opportunities. When we first tried Leos, I guess we went to Leos 20 years ago or something like that.
We were when we were running Volvo on Call. One of the first things we did, starting back in 1997, 96. Yeah. We looked at Leo, and at that point in time, people were just beginning to do it, and then everybody went out of business. It's very expensive, and it's still very expensive. It's come around again, but I don't want to focus too much on it. Let's not spend too much time on. My point in writing this was primarily to give information to everybody about how it works, whether it's going to be good or not, whether it's going to actually be an application. Or enable applications in the short term, long term, we don't really know right now. All we know is that there are two companies who are involved in the car business. One is Geely and one is Tesla, who have something or doing something in Leos, and we'll watch them to see how it goes.
Of course, the other real opportunity for cars is that they have a lot of power. Whereas maybe your phone has, some power limitations, some battery limitations, and those kinds of things, limitations. Yes, we make sure we need, a lot of range, but for bursts of power that we might need and use for communications in a car, I mean, that's not as tough as with your handheld. But anyway, right. Maybe batteries will improve also, so that all this stuff really works.
Yep. Well, in the April edition of the Dispatcher, in Dispatch Central, on top is Toyota, Toyoda, on the sales prospects for battery electric vehicles. This is the chairman of Toyota, Akio Toyoda. Okay, if I'm saying it right.
Yep. His grandfather started the whole thing, and his father was there, and he took over, and now he's chairman of the board, and he's got somebody who's not a Toyota, who's the CEO. So he's speaking. No, can't really say that he's speaking as a direct link into the company, but he's been around for quite a long time. He's got a lot of experience, and what he's saying, and certainly I believe in it, because this is the message that I've been giving, which is that electric vehicles are not going to be 100% of the car market. And what he's saying is that the likelihood is that will be something in the vicinity of 30%, and the rest will be made up of the cars, the kind of cars that we have today, but principally hybrid vehicles, hydrogen electric vehicles, and anything else that might come along and that we can invent, as inventive humans that we are, come up in the future. And will he be around in 20 years to see whether this is the case? Yeah, he's young enough. He could possibly be there. So it's not like he's saying, I'm 90, 95, and I don't know, I'm not going to be around for much longer. So I think it's, we're never going to have electric vehicles. He's saying what he thinks is the case. And what we're seeing right now is what he said several years ago. There are a lot of problems with quick implementation of battery electric vehicles. There are even more problems with the long-term implementation of battery electric vehicles. Let's not put all of our batteries in one basket. Let's try to make sure that we continue to have mobility, make sure that we don't stress both the materials that we have to mine and produce, and the electric systems. So,
Well, the message might be a little different in Scandinavia, your neck of the woods there, where you see these sales that are way up there for BEVs.
You mean with electric car sales?
Yes, yes.
Well, as I said many times, if somebody says to you, you are not going to be able to drive this ICE car on these roads starting at this time, number one, you are going to have to pay 10 times the amount of money in insurance. Sorry, not insurance. Insurance is less actually in ICE still today. For taxes, we're gonna just take the money out of your pocket, out of your bank, your piggy bank, and we're gonna put it into our piggy bank. If they say, and then they say, and on top of that, if you buy this car, we're gonna give you $7,000, $10,000. What are you gonna do? I mean, I can't believe the number
of them. I'm going to buy 100.
Well, it looks like we have a neighbor. We have, I think I mentioned this. We have most of the parking lots, at least north of where Stockholm, in the Stockholm area, there are electric outlets, so you can plug your car in and heat the car. And if you leave the car for a couple of days and it's been snowing, you don't have to come back and de-ice the car. It's you can get in it and drive it. Our condominium association decided to take out all of those things. There are about 50 of them, and put in plugs for battery electric vehicles. So you have to have a special plug. And I told them this isn't going to work for me, because all I want to do is plug my car in to make sure it doesn't ice up. I can't do that the way that I could do it before. Every day I have to start it up again, and it's very inconvenient. So I don't use it. And by the way, we have one person out of those 50 who is using the plug in, and it happens to be someone who lives in the next condominium, and they don't have them. So he's renting from someone in our condominium association. He's paying about $600 a month. He's got 5 Teslas. He has 5 Teslas. And he's living in a condominium across. So he brings them over like one at a time and plugs them in. And
wait a minute. Wait, what does he use 5 Teslas?
I have no idea. Let's not even go there.
We have 4 cars out here, and Elizabeth walks me to work. So I get it.
Maybe he's doing move style mobility, but
maybe he's operating a taxi business around the way. So anyway, Toyota, I believe in Mr. Toyota.
But on this issue, is 30% a stable equilibrium?
Yeah, that's what he's claiming.
I mean, is 30? I keep trying to think who has 30% of a market of a technology. I mean, things end up being like 80% somebody and 20% somebody else and 2% the third guy, and the luxury brands that follow.
I mean, if you want to look globally at the telephone market, Apple doesn't have 50%. It doesn't have 70%. Apple has a percentage or whatever it is, and then there's Samsung, and it's Huawei taking almost all of the Chinese market. I mean,
yeah, I guess
there aren't that many car companies comparatively. It's not like maybe there are lots of local beer companies or cereal companies in every country, but
But the operating system that they work on, or the CDMA, TDMA, whatever underlying technologies that power those individual companies.
Well, I hope there's nobody
the-
listening who's under 45 years old. They'll have no idea what you just said. TDMA, CDMA, you kidding?
CDMA, TDMA. I don't even know what the hell they're using anymore,
Code division
but
yeah,
yeah,
let's
but
go.
I mean, on a fundamental base, because this is a fund. We're going to have a lot of manufacturers. We're going to have a lot of people selling them. I mean, even in the car market, it's 50% trucks and 50% cars.
No,
Aren't
not even
they?
close. No, no,
Truck bodies and car bodies. I mean,
no.
all
There's
the
no,
SUVs are
no,
on
no.
a truck body, aren't they? I mean,
Well, are
you
you
know,
you? No, that's no light commercial vehicles. No, no. When
pickup pickup.
trucks are big. Trucks are bigger than SUVs. SUVs,
No,
that
I'm
whole
talking
business of
about
SUVs.
pickups. I mean, the
Pickups,
whole the whole
pickups are
the car
cars.
industry, didn't it go into the
Come on.
way it was going to avoid
No,
cafe standards, is because the cafe standards originally weren't associated with a truck, with a pickup chassis, and so everybody
let's
stuck
Michael,
not let's
technically,
not
car
you're
go there.
body on a
probably right,
pickup
but if
chassis.
you talk to people with pickup trucks in many parts of the U.S., at least, they're going to tell you they have a truck. They don't have a
Yeah,
car.
I know. They have a truck, right?
No, I'm
Okay.
talking about those trucks. I'm not talking about
No, no,
pickup.
no, 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 no. I mean, they're all this. It's all the same. There's the same. All of the SUVs that are built by most of the car companies today are built on the same platform, and both
That's what
electronic
I
platform and
mean.
yeah, they're cars. I mean, it was over 10, 12 years ago that the number of what were called trucks passed the number of what we called passenger cars.
Right.
It's in the United States, and
Right.
then it's gradually gotten further and further higher and higher in Europe and China and other places. They're just big cars. That's all. So there really is no. It's light commercial vehicles. It's everything that is a passenger car or a SUV or a pickup truck. It's all the same market. And
I know it's the same market.
yeah,
I'm just wondering if it's the same fundamental design technology, and whether or not, if we consider, the car truck divide, that the ICE, EV, EV. Okay, all right.
no.
So okay, all right.
Think think think
We'll
Cybertruck.
stick. Huh?
Think Cybertruck. Do you think the Cybertruck is different from a a Model X or a Model Y or a Model S or a Model whatever it is? It's the same car. I mean, everything is the same. It's just it's just different thing, something that's been plopped on top of it by Tesla, and it's the same. It used to be. I mean, there was the body on frame, and then we
Yeah.
we came with with unibody. All of those things, whether it's a
Right. So
car
those
or
things evolve.
pickup.
The technology. That's my point. The technologies evolve,
Yeah.
and the technologies evolve to not have a stable situation in which a third of them are this kind, a third of them are this kind, and a third of them are that kind. The technologies evolved. One bypasses one tries to bypass the other and then dies. The other one, and the dynamics of that. And I, you know, I'm I'm just not sure that that the competition between ICE, diesel, hydrogen, Alan Kornhauser powered legs, whatever other technology you might think of that might come in there, that those energy technologies with the vehicle end up with, a third as a stable future being of one kind, be
Okay.
it
Let,
be it
let's let's
whatever.
back up.
Sure.
Let's go back to 2012.
Yeah. I mean,
All right.
right.
2012, 100% of the cars were ICE.
Right.
Right. And they ran on diesel, they ran on biofuel, they ran on petrol, gasoline.
Okay.
They didn't run on pasteurized milk, right? We didn't have battery electric vehicles. Then came Tesla. Tesla came around and they started selling battery electric vehicles. Of course, we had golf carts, and of course, we had little things that were running around in towns like this that were. But when we talk about it, the primary mass market cars, and in cars I include everything that is can be, that isn't being used for hauling goods, whether it's one person or 5 people in there, it doesn't matter. And then gradually, as the governments began to hand out money and tell people that they had to buy these, otherwise that they weren't going to have a savings account anymore, we gradually got more and more of these cars. And people are saying that, many people, pundits, were saying that by 2030, since Toyota, since Volvo, and name any other car, General Motors, were only going to make battery electric vehicles. Then by 2035, all the cars were going to be battery electric vehicles. That's like 100%. And what Mr. Toyota is saying is, in your dreams. We're never going to get there because Africa is part of the world and Asia is part of the world, and Russia, even though we might not want it to be, is still part of the world. Northern Canada, we'll continue to have something other than battery electric vehicles. And all he's saying is that there will be a mix of ICE in the future, 2035, ICE, battery electric vehicles. Most likely the majority will be hybrid vehicles. That's what he's saying. And I believe him because they offer the best of the best. And then somewhere in between there will be hydrogen vehicles and maybe something else that we'll invent. That's all.
I know that that's what he's saying. I'm saying that that's not a stable equilibrium.
I'll write to him and tell him that.
I'm saying that we might pass through that point. There was a ton of money saying that we should be using corn to make gasoline, and all the cars were going to run on gasoline. We didn't get there.
Yeah, well, we didn't use we used trees here instead of corn. But
whatever the ethanol stuff, and then at some point somebody said it was going to be diesel, and I'm just saying that there ends up being a dominant pusher that ends up overtaking all the others. All the others fall by the wayside. They lead for a while, and then somebody else leapfrogs them, and they go back into oblivion and who knows what. To me, thinking that it's going to be a stable 30% is, to me, is an unstable point. Why? Because there isn't enough of corporate and R&D and all that stuff to keep it there. It's got to be to keep it going there. It's either got to have a slope up or it's going to have a slope down. There's not enough to keep it there. I'm only talking about the stability of that point, not the fact that we're going to achieve that point. And I don't know what's going to end up dominating, but I think you have to look not only at the value, but at the rate of changes, the forces, the derivatives, the motivations that are in place at that point as to whether or not it exists. If we take ourselves back to 1905, or give or take, when you had steam, electricity, and internal combustion, each trying to beat each other's brains out as to who's going to, they're all passing through 30%. Okay. Somebody ended up winning, knocking the other. I'm just suggesting that the dynamics of the situation, and I'm trying to go farther than what he said. Okay. I think at some point we do maybe hit 30. I mean, for us to hit 30%, there have to be major, because where are we now? We're not at 10 yet, are we?
No.
Worldwide?
We're
not
close.
Anywhere near 10. We're down at, are we even at 5?
In the US. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah,
But
in the U.S., but as you properly characterize, we want to look at the market as a whole, global, and everybody else,
have to do
and
that.
and so that's the only thing I'm trying to
Yeah.
grapple with here. Okay.
If
Anyway,
we
let's move
if we go
on.
back to last month's issue when
Yeah,
I said
yeah.
if we had listened to Toyota and gotten on board with him instead of some big mouths from General Motors and Chrysler, maybe we would all have adopted hybrid vehicles, and everyone would be
Yeah,
driving around with hybrid vehicles today, and we wouldn't have the problem that we have today with global warming.
yeah, no, that's true, and that may in fact be true. Just
Yeah.
say the forces and dynamic. There are forces that are operating on these systems, and there are dynamics associated with it, and the issue is when you're getting the darn thing started in the beginning. The tough part is always getting started, because to get yourself and to take the first step, you've got to have the energy and the push in it to take the second one. Okay.
Or you
And
have to have a government behind you
well,
handing out money
yeah,
so that
I'm
you know.
assuming, yeah,
No.
I'm saying
I-
you need those, and you need all
Yeah.
kinds of help to
Sure.
get that second foot out there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you trip. I'll probably talk about a little bit about General Motors a little later on,
Right.
one of the topics here.
Well, I wanted to throw this out. Bloomberg Hyperdrive had a report out this past week on the growing list of EV adopters, and they are saying what the tipping points were. They're saying that in 2021, the second quarter, the global total of pure electric vehicles reached 14.5%, led by,
Was that many?
Norway was 79.6%. These are new car sales.
But again, the
Right.
new car sales are just one piece of the pie. That's just
course.
the inkling at that particular point. You have all the used car sales, you have everything else, you have a whole momentum, behind various things, and
Right.
to
The U.S. reached 8.1% in the fourth quarter of 2021.
Yeah.
8.1%
But
new car sales.
yeah,
Right.
it's nowhere close to that today. And then we have to look at where were the car sales in 2021. There were 30% of them, I think, almost 30% of them, or more than 30% of them were in China. And China was pushing, they were pushing battery electric vehicles like the British were pushing opium and before the the
We're not going. Where
the
did we just
China.
go? We're not going
All
there.
right.
Okay.
We'll move along.
We're moving along.
Michael, in the dispatcher, you have a story about Polestar's winding path. You call it a soap
Yeah.
opera.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a soap opera. There was a very good article that appeared in the equivalent of the Financial Times, the Swedish equivalent of the Financial Times, and they had interviews with not with the CEO of Volvo, but they did manage to get interviews with Håkan Samuelsson, who was the CEO when Volvo acquired Polestar, the Polestar name, and when Volvo agreed with Geely, Li Shufu, just call me Eric, to put Polestar out as a business on its own, and then to do an IPO with Polestar. So he was involved, and what's happened now is that Geely is acquiring almost all of Volvo's shares. So Volvo and Geely had 50-50 in Polestar once they decided that it was going to go into a market. It also talked about the people at Polestar, who had built this up. It's a long story. Polestar started out as a trimmed Volvo, but it was super trimmed, and it was a lot of non-Volvo parts. And Volvo decided that they would buy it, bring it in, and this would juice up the Volvo as a company, because it was a racing car. I mean, basically, it was a racing car, but it was a car that could be sold for the road, and it did. They had a lot of sales. Their sales were going up, and it was a trimmed Volvo, mostly the 40 series Volvo. But once they brought it in, Geely decided, Li Shifu, that it was going to had to be an electric car. Otherwise, it wasn't going to be anything. So they came out with the first car, and it was a hybrid, and it was a clunker. I mean, it got the worst reviews. This is all from this article. But they pursued this because the real goal was to get Volvo on the market, and they had tried doing an IPO with Volvo, which is 100% owned by Geely, but it failed. Just bad timing, and Geely wanted to keep too much of it, and so they did this thing with Polestar to kind of pump up the view that Volvo was really, the top. It was going to have an electric car company. It was going to own an electric car company, and it was going to eventually become an electric car company. And that was part of the pitch in the IPO. So the IPO was done with I can't remember which one was. I believe it was Volvo first, and then they did the IPO with Polestar. And after the first few days, Polestar just went into the tank, and their sales have been stagnant. They haven't sold very much. It's a decent, it's a very good car. I mean, it is a decent car. There's no question, but it's principally a Volvo, but an electric Volvo. And it was just eating money. So they decided, what are we going to do with it? And I said, they never should have made it a separate company. It should have been a brand within Volvo, like Lexus is part of Toyota, rather than having all of the administration and everything duplicated to run this company. The sales aren't that much. Add the sales to Volvo, and it becomes part of the Volvo team. They're doing exactly the opposite. They're going to continue to run it as a private company, like the Lotus and the other ones that Geely owns. And now Volvo has almost no stake in it. They still own a percentage of it, but it's certainly not 50% of the company. And they will invest nothing more in the company. That's Geely's taking all the expenses. And what I've said of this, that they've done exactly the same thing with Polestar, which was part of Volvo, as they have done with ICE motors. Geely bought ICE technology, and Volvo no longer has ICE technology. If they want to build ICE cars to sell in Africa or South America or wherever, they're going to have to use Geely technology because Geely owns it now. And by the way, it's owned 50% by, it's either Renault or Stellantis owns a percentage of that as well. So Volvo had some of the best motors, diesel and petrol motors, and now all of that is in Geely's hands. So where this is all going to go with Volvo, and we know where it's going with Polestar. Whether they're going to be around or not, it's up in the air.
And people should know that our listeners, viewers, that you have a history and a lot of knowledge with Volvo.
I worked for as an employee of Volvo between January of 1992 and December of 1996. I then began a consulting assignment with Volvo, which for a few years, Volvo Cars was still, up until 1999, Volvo Cars was still part of AB Volvo, and worked with both AB Volvo and Volvo Cars as a consultant. Continued my work with Volvo Cars as a consultant until 2015, principally with the implementation of Volvo on Call in all the markets except for Brazil, up to 2015.
Terrific. In the Dispatcher, you have an interesting take on carbon offsets.
Yeah, I sort of wrote it for the Easter holiday. That's comparing carbon offsets to indulgences. I think I've got a few readers who I know will appreciate this. If you grew up as I did in a very religious family, and my grandfather was part of the group that started these. The Mother Church, the Italian Mother Church in northeastern Pennsylvania. You learned about these things, but it's the same thing. I mean, what people are doing you buy offsets to not to purge well, in a sense, to purge your soul. You buy the offset. Once you buy the offset, you own that, and you can say, I've planted X number of million trees in Africa, and therefore I continue to get to do what I was doing before, which is burning coal to make electricity. I mean, that's how it works. That's what the whole point of this is. So I hope people read it, because I've tried to use as many simple analogies of comparing what a carbon offset is. And unfortunately,
is this like the Corleones building a church or something?
you got it. That's exactly the point. Exactly the point. Yeah, they sold indulgences, and that Martin Luther King, that was his whole thing. That he thought you can't buy your way into heaven. The only way you can't do good deeds to get into heaven. You got to talk to God, nobody in between, and it's between the two of you. And if you don't make it, between the two of you, you're not going to make it. So this business of building churches, and buying get out of purgatory free, it ain't going to work. So.
Oh, but that's the way I was going to do it. I mean, I've been trying to make some money so I could do that. I can't do that.
Don't worry, you're going to go to heaven. For someone who teaches at a university like the one that we went to in different, about almost the same times, you've done your penance. You're gonna go. You've got to get out of purgatory card, right? You're gonna go straight to heaven.
You should. I should point out some details of what I did this past week. I think in part, I did earn it. I mean, at times it takes some work to get these supposedly, really bright individuals,
Yep. Yes.
To see the Lord.
Let's skip to the musing section of the dispatcher. You have opposing AI thoughts. When it comes to AI, who can you trust?
Yeah. As I said when we started, I've been writing about artificial general intelligence, and that's really what we're discussing here. Artificial general intelligence, where machines can do things that very close to what humans. It's not AI. It's AI to a certain extent, but it's artificial general intelligence is bigger than that. And there are two camps. There are the doomers and the boosters. And Jensen Huang, and that's why I've used both of these individuals. Geoffrey Hinton, who can be considered one of the founders of the whole AGI concept. I mean, he's been working with this for many years. He was the person who provided the programming, the basis for some of the things that Jensen Huang was doing, and vice versa. So Jensen Huang is among the boosters. There are different names for the boosters. Sorry, it's over here. Yeah, really interesting names for the boosters. Techno-optimists, effective accelerationists, EX, they're called EX. People who say, don't worry, look, I've been there, I know this. This is, paraphrasing Jensen. I know how these things work. Trust me. I know how we program these things. I know how we've developed the systems to help these machines to understand what they're looking at and to do the work that they're doing. So, we're not taking the humans out of the loop. They'll always be there, and they're never going to get away with doing what the doomers think they're going to do. And then we have people like Jensen Hinton, who spent his entire career doing everything that he could to build these systems, who's now saying, you know what, I think these things are going to do exactly what the people who are spreading doom say they're going to do. They're going to sneak out, they're going to turn around, and they're going to, just like the scorpion carrying the frog across the water, they're going to bite him, they're going to sting him, he's going to drown, and the scorpion's going to drown, that's what their nature is going to be. So we have these two groups who are working on this, and sometimes in musings I write about things where in the end the story ends and it's a happy ending. And sometimes I write about things when the story ends and it's not such a happy ending. In this case, I wrote this to say, you're part of the ending. You're part of what is going to happen with these. Think about what you're doing today in terms of what you think you want to have happen in the future. You're going to have to take sides. At some point, you could say you're a normie. That's where I am right now. I'm a normie. I mean, I haven't decided whether I'm a doomer or a booster. So right now I fit into the category of a normie, where I say there's some really good possibilities. These things are going to do everything we want them to do, and they're going to do it well, and they're not going to be dangerous. But I listen to guys like Geoffrey Hinton, who says, I know more than you do about what these things are going to be able to do, and I think it's a problem. So, and that's why I put in the letter that that the group wrote a couple of years ago to say, we have to have a pause. And Geoffrey Hinton didn't sign the letter, and Jensen Huang certainly didn't sign the letter. But some other people who were working in the area did. Altman signed the letter. So think about it. Do we want to have democratic societies? Do we want to have democratic societies all over the world in the future? Or do we want to have totalitarian societies all over the world in the future? And what do we have to do today to make sure that we get what we want to have? If you're a totalitarianist, you do everything we can do. So if you're some guy who's running a country called Hungary, we're not quite sure what he wants, because he does things sometimes, like he finally let Sweden get into NATO, but then he does other things like have parties with Mr. Putin. So he's sort of kind of playing both sides of this situation. And I think we have the same thing when it comes to artificial general intelligence. We don't have humanless drive without AGI. That's what I wrote in 2018, and it's even more true today. We cannot have cars that drive themselves unless they've got the kind of intelligence built into them, not being passed over the airways from LEO satellites or terrestrial communications, that these cars, in order for them to be able to make the decisions that they need to make every minute, every second, they need to have the kind of intelligence that AGI implies. And in order to get there, we have to build systems that have AGI. So eventually, these two things are interlocked. We cannot have cars that drive themselves all the time unless we have cars that are smart enough to do the job that a human does today, and does pretty well.
And you're not necessarily talking about the Waymo scenario or a specific ODD, operational design domain. Just clarifying that.
Well, right now, yeah, Waymo is operating in an enclosed area. They move from place to place. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is cars that do what cars do today, that they drive everywhere and they drive how they need to drive. It's not the car that's going to do what we've described in our book in Trenton or in Scranton or in most places, where we restrict what the car is doing in order to be able to make the cars safe for doing what they will be doing within that restricted area. It is a defined operational design domain. It is restricted to the areas where they can perform. It's not operating like a car will operate today, where I can drive that car anywhere, anytime, any time of day, any time of year, to wherever I want to drive.
Yeah, but I'm of course glad, and I know that you believe that. Otherwise, we couldn't have written a book.
Exactly.
We couldn't have written a book. My position on all this is one will probably, the chances that I'm going to see generalized AI is zero, is essentially zero. We're so far away from it. It's unbelievable. My view. Okay. What these things do today are, in some sense, trivial compared to what we can do as humans. Okay. My view is none of these things have come anywhere near passing the Turing test. They just haven't. This is all hype. This is all, pumped up. They can do some things. They can do some things. And I think they can do some things sufficiently well that the value proposition out of what they do well is such that it is greater and probably substantially greater than the risks that are imposed on it. We had a ship hit a pier, bring down a bridge. Okay, nothing is perfectly safe. And as far as thinking that HAL or any of these machines are going to do what even a 6-year-old can do, I mean, it's like crazy. And I can't drive anywhere. I can't drive. I can't. I think I almost tried to drive in Sandy because I didn't believe Sandy was going to turn left and hit Jersey. And Sandy did, and I just barely made it home. But I was out there like a stupid guy, trying to do that. And all this stuff, like the stuff that's still out there. I mean, it was so nice. Tesla comes out and says, I'm now going to call this supervised FSD. Oh my goodness. I mean, what an opportunity to kind of, take the hype the heck out of this thing. Forget what FSD may. I mean, you should call it supervised XYZ, but I'll let you have the supervised FSD. But let's stop the hype. But then what's in there? People are out there almost everywhere. The objective is not to do this almost everywhere, almost all the time. When it snows here, schools close. We decide we don't want to educate our kids during those days because it snowed. Oh, but now I have to have my driverless car be able to go in Swedish whatever anywhere down any up the Great Wall and all this stuff. And then Geely, I brought back in the newsletter the come on, man. I mean, how irresponsible. Oh, look at us. We can do an autonomous power slide on a frozen lake. What? You're spending good Chinese money, good Beijing money to develop that? Are you nuts? I mean, I hope Seat goes and whacks you for that one. What good? I mean, really? Oh, I'm so proud of you, Geely, for your accomplishment here. Oh, you're so good. Get out of here. How about some response? Some people need rides. Some people need to be able to drive themselves better. Okay.
Yeah,
Why don't we just focus on that? What is all the whole, man, I got to do a power slide. I got to go 220 miles an hour. I have to accelerate 0 to 100. What the hell? Get out of my face. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, well, go ahead, Michael.
No, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say on the Tesla story with the supervised FSD, one of the aspects of that story is now that Musk has, I guess, ordered that everyone buying a Tesla gets it installed and a demo using it free for 30 days. Sounds like a pretty smart sales tool, perhaps.
And he's also instructed the people to be educated on what it does.
They have to be trained, right?
They have to be educated, and and I hope they're told that you got to pay attention. And you have to pay attention.
They are calling it the supervised FSD.
And that the supervised is not just not just, hey, I'm supposed to supervise it. So, hey, remember, you're the responsible and something happens, it's on you. It's that camera inside the Tesla, they've really empowered that thing that if you start misbehaving, if you start misusing, you get pulled over, you get a dunce cap put on your head, you have to go give who knows how many Hail Marys, you got to whatever, and you don't get it until you have a note from your mother. Come on. I mean, look, Tesla has to do that. This is an opportunity to do that. The supervised part is a great idea, but the supervised part, supervise it. Say, this is my product. You're not allowed to misuse it. Because all the most of the stuff, most of the problems is in misusing. I mean, Michael's going to think he can go out there in deep snow with this thing. Oh, it's almost everywhere. Here I go. I mean, it's like crazy stuff.
If this were coming from someone who would take advice, not just a demand that you do this, but just take advice, then I would have some faith in it. But we're talking about Elon Musk here, saying, and I know that there are people, one of them is sitting here, who buy Teslas who aren't anywhere close to being the kind of person that Elon Musk is. But there are probably a large number of people who buy Teslas who aren't going to take. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit in my chair and listen to somebody give me instructions. I know how this works, and I'm going to just take my car and do whatever I want to do with it.
Okay, that's true. That's true. That's why the camera in there, the supervised, has to be two-way supervised. Okay, you can decide to not supervise yourself, but you're going to get supervised by that camera. And if you don't like being supervised by that camera,
a certain number of seconds, it turns off. Yes,
it gets turned off. It has to be. Come on, we've got to be here. You don't get your cake and eat it too on this one. Okay.
And do we assume that Elon Musk drives a Tesla? And do you think that Elon Musk is going to allow somebody to tell him that you're going to have to go sit in the corner and put the dunce cap on because you didn't pay attention? No.
Yeah, and I don't think then I will stop being a fanboy of Elon Musk.
Okay.
There's got to be this is on public streets. We've played around with this and we've been cute this way and that way. This stuff is good.
Yeah,
Fred took me for a ride and I was thoroughly impressed. It is good. It's good for me. It'll make me safer. It could save my life. It'll make me more comfortable, but I can't misbehave.
Yeah. You described,
and if I misbehave, this, I shouldn't get it because then it's going to affect you. And I agree with that.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to affect.
There's a two-way street here.
It's going to affect the driver who's in the other car as much as it's going to affect the driver.
Absolutely. So there has to be the agreement with two. And if we don't have that, then we don't get the benefit. Then the toys get taken away. Then you're going to find someone else, use your feet, walk. I don't know, pay $1 gazillion to have, your chauffeur take you. Okay. This is not going to work. It's not for that. It's not to be misused.
Well, it does sound like with some big help from NHTSA, they've implemented safeguards to make this really usable and perhaps valuable. I mean, you do have to keep a hand on the wheel. There has to be pressure there, not just resting on the wheel. The camera is watching you. If you're not watching the road, it warns you and then will turn off, and it will turn it off if a certain number of violations.
If you do
you lose it for a week at a time.
If you do that,
right.
Then so it can't see you, then it turns off.
Right.
It knows I did that. It knows I did this. It knows that I put, somebody's face up there. It knows that I'm faking it. Come on, it's smart. If it's going to have generalized intelligence, it's certainly going to know that.
It also alerts you if there are situations where it's not going to work properly. It alerts the driver that whether it's water on the camera outside or something else, that it's not working up to par. It tells you that.
Great, so it should turn off.
Right.
I mean, this is simple. And the objective of it's got to work everywhere. It's got to do an autonomous power slide on a frozen bed and put it out there. Look at me, my Chinese company. I've had Chinese financing, government financing. Look at me. Don't bring it here, please.
One other quick story, Alan.
Have fun with it in China.
Yahoo
I'm
Finance.
really.
Yahoo Finance and Fortune report GM has sliced the budget of Cruise by $1 billion. We knew all that. And they're saying now they may bring on new investors when they start up with robo-taxis again. I didn't see a date when they're planning to do that.
This stuff is hard. It's hard to even do in an operational design domain in which you have people behaving. And now you're going to take away budgets. You're going to think you can do it on the cheap. Just go out of business, okay? Seriously. This is hard. And this is not to do it everywhere. You haven't even done it someplace. Apparently, the mayor of New York is now, taking the first steps to enable driverless cars to be tested in New York. What? He says he claims that they're a reality. They're not a reality. They work. Two companies got this thing to work in two places, barely. And people are saying, oh, it works, and now we've got to have it in New York City. Are you kidding? That's like ludicrous. It's crazy. Nobody's got even an angstrom, an epsilon, a simple little piece of value out of this. And now we're going to bring value to Manhattan that has a great subway system that people get around. You can walk most places anyway, whatever. Has taxi cabs that are, whatever. And now we got to have driverless. And this is, oh my goodness.
That reminds me of another headline from the Dispatcher.
Cut this hype out.
It reminds me of another headline from the Dispatcher, who stops on red, trying to bring it to New York because a lot of people don't.
No,
come on.
Yeah,
you've spent 300 plus billion on this thing, and now you do a power slide, an autonomous power slide on a lake bed, on a frozen lake. And we're supposed to stand up. Oh, you're so great. You're so great. This is a bunch of techno jerks out there. Whatever.
I've given my opinion about Cruise and about General Motors. I think that the problem with Cruise started and ended with General Motors and the person who's in charge of General Motors. Running that company the way that it was run by the person who was in charge of it, instead of firing and getting rid of the people who were doing the job that needed to be done, they should have gotten rid of the people who were responsible for how. And now they're taking it one step further and taking the money away from it. I totally agree with Alan. There's only one thing that should happen with Cruise, and it's to sell the assets to someone who will do something with that, with what they have, which is good, which was very good. Not as good as Waymo, but pretty close, and let them do something with it, including the people who were running it before, and get it out of General Motors, because it's just going to die there like everything else. No, General Motors makes some decent cars. My father's first car was a Chevy. So actually, second car was a Chevy too.
I guess my first car was a General Motors car.
My first car was a Volkswagen. We don't need. I wrote about my first cars too. Look, I think that we can't have it both ways. We can, on one hand, say we want to be able to test this everywhere, and full self-driving allows you to test this everywhere, even with all of the restrictions and all of the controls. People are driving these cars with their hands off the wheel or with the hands on the wheel, but these cars are being driven as a full self-driving, as a driverless car.
They, they
Without
can't be. They
with
can't be. It's going to be carnage.
yeah, we have
Okay.
to have better. The people who are in charge of putting cars on the road, whether it's at the federal level in the United States or at the state level, or at the country level in Europe, or at the European Union level, have got to make sure that that the people are doing things that the way they should be doing so that they're safe. And I've said it, and I'm going to say it again. The only thing we have right now is one UN regulation which provides for how cars should turn over control from them being driven by a person to them being driven by a robot. That's the only thing we have right now. And we need to have more of that. And the United States hasn't even implemented that. They haven't incorporated that into federal motor vehicle safety standards yet. They should, but they haven't yet. So
I'm not sure. I'm not
yeah,
sure, Michael.
I know
mean,
we've had
look,
this discussion many times.
you know, you can do this within the operational design domain and keep the cars out there. You know, this stuff we can do. We can keep cars from speeding. We can keep cars from crashing into cars ahead of us. We just have to get the driver to behave, and when the driver isn't behaving, take over. Okay, it's the driver's the problem. The person's the problem. This thing has been sold by Madison Avenue by those folks as this great freedom thing that I can do anything. And the car commercials today, I mean, there are commercials that show cars flying through the air with people like whatever,
Alan, have you seen the new
running through deep
Dodge Charger
snow. I mean,
commercial?
it's like crazy stuff.
There's a new
This is
Dodge
what the
Charger commercial.
industry's doing. And we
Yeah.
have Geely out there, oh, so proud, autonomous. We didn't have anybody behind the wheel, and we did it. I mean, come on.
I was trying to tell you there's a new Dodge Charger commercial which essentially shows a kid. It looks like he's about 12 years old behind the wheel with his parents sitting next to him doing these crazy stunts in the car, and
They're selling a
selling the
dream.
power
They've
selling
been
the power
selling
of the
a dream.
vehicle.
The
But
car industry's been selling a dream, and it's catching up to them. Where in fact people need rides. They need a responsible operator to oversee these things, and you put these things probably as they exist today. They're really close in a responsible operator, and give that operator at least some enforcement power to, take the toys away from those that misbehave, because the human's the problem.
And this is some part of what we're going to be discussing at the end of May at the
I hope
Princeton
so,
Safe
right?
Driving
two
Cars.
months away.
It's 2
2
months
2
away.
months away. I hope we
Yeah.
do. I mean, this needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
This really needs to be discussed. I mean, is this, the government won't give us freedom in voting or anything. We get our only freedom is that what we get in our car to be able to act like goofballs.
And this is the reason why I write the dispatcher, and Alan writes the Smart Driving Cars newsletter.
Yeah.
And together
Fred,
you wrote a book.
and together we wrote a book, and Fred manages these wonderful discussions that we have where we vent,
Yeah.
we hypothesize, and we postulate, and
I do want to say one more thing on the AI thing, because my mind has certainly changed a little bit since going out and listening and being at the NVIDIA GTC. I guess I came back to class and basically said that one, I have to really sort of change a little bit how we look at doing computing and algorithms and so on, whatever, because the amount of power that one gets, the parallelism and the tools that one has on top of that to do some things, and some compute things that before we only dreamed of being able to do, are really great, are really wonderful. But as far as this thing goes, in terms of passing Turing tests. It's still nowhere close, and it's nowhere close, and it's not going to be anywhere close. And that the other thing is that if we're to get anything out of the current AI, chat GPT type version things and that are out there now, is that, as a starting point, great. The toughest thing in doing something is getting started. But the only thing it's going to do is get started, because you end up having to look at it and you have to end up having to say whether or not it's completely goofy or it really has reasonable way to go. And then you have to be able to edit it. And in fact, with the juniors that I met about thinking about their senior theses, and did that a couple of days ago, that they're going to have to do. Geez, as far as I'm concerned, this summer you can just use Chat GPT 28 or wherever the hell we are, and let it do the zero draft for you. But make sure the one reference you have in the back is, I use Chat GPT version 2248 point whatever to generate this thing. Okay. As you would reference anything that you would put in your thesis, and get started. And you can use that as a way to get started. If you don't want to do that yourself, fine. But from there, man, it's on you. It's on you to provide the input. This thing's not going to give you that. It's nowhere near capable of doing it. It's going to help you. It's going to help you some things. Oh man, that would have been tough. Help me dig this trench. Help me, weld this piece. Who knows what? But not gonna, nowhere near. Anyway, yep. Throw into my frustrations with all this, which is what's great about we are gonna be trying to discuss all these things for the summit. We claim that we have three challenges here. Proof of concept, proof of market, and the
proof of
policy. And policy. The policy is a people. It probably should use proof of P. Policy is in there. That's politics. It's people. It's it's trying to get that value proposition out there legitimized. And able to be pursued, as opposed to roadblocks thrown in front of it and so on. And and that's,
we spent a chapter in the book on
that's
policy.
Really tough. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
the book
focuses on these things, and what we're going to do at the summit is we're going to try to discuss these things with people who bring some good thought into at least pieces of this. None of us are capable of handling all of them. I mean, of course not. I mean, that's too much. And trust me, any of the AI, never mind.
Should be a great event.
Not anytime soon.
Yep. Michael, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
My pleasure, as always.
As always, thank you. And hey, as always, it's a lot of fun. Hey,
the website,
if all this
for more,
was easy, it would already been done. We wouldn't be talking about it.
That's right.
The website is michaelsena.com. Wishing you and those in our audience who celebrate a very happy Easter. Yep. You can find us at smartdrivingcar.com. Also, wherever you turn to for podcasts, Spotify, Apple, TuneIn, Amazon, Google. You can get smart speakers to play us. You can find my tech reports at textination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alan Kornhauser. Thank you for listening or watching. Great holiday and stay safe.
Yeah, have a safe holiday. Be careful out there if you're driving. Oh my goodness.
Thanks. Thank you.